And then came back home, and I was director of engineering for a small engineering firm for 5 years, and then I bought Team Specialty Products back in 2001, and another company called MC Manufacturing that was in Rio Rancho, New Mexico. Combined those, we rebranded them as Team Technologies. And then about 2002, 2003, I was asked by the mayor of Albuquerque, the bilateral commission between Albuquerque and Chihuahua. And so I was the technology commissioner for Albuquerque. My counterpart in Chihuahua, a gentleman by the name of Gabriel Ortiz, is still a good friend of mine, and actually one of the partners in the company that we've formed down in Mexico. So it's really been about a 10-year journey in terms of doing business in Mexico. When the economy hit hard, we had to kind of back off from doing anything in Mexico, just and focus on our core business and make sure that we could survive. And so the good news is we did that. We survived. We're pretty much the last man standing in this town doing what we do. And so we're proud of that. And so since then, we've expanded into Mexico, and we'll get to that in a bit. Thanks.
Hello, thank you. Mr. Varela.
Well, good morning. It's great to be here. I want to first of all thank Libre and the various Hispanic chambers that are involved in this. I see my good friend Alex Romero back there. Also had the honor to serve as chairman of the board for the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber back in 2000. So we appreciate the work that goes into organizing these conferences. And I want to thank Lee for thanking you for moderating this today. It's really an honor to be here with all of you. I am a native New Mexican, one of these guys that can trace their roots back in this state many hundreds of years. We go way back. I grew up in the Mesilla Valley, just north of Las Cruces. Went to public high school at Las Cruces High, and had the opportunity of getting involved in border issues in a very kind of direct but interesting way. I got to serve as a senior advisor to Congressman Skeen. I was in law school, went to law school at night. We worked border issues along with Senator Domenici. We were really enacted a series of pieces of legislation that really set the stage for border growth. But you fast forward, and I want to set the stage for what we're going to talk about today. 4.5 short years ago, the state of New Hampshire did 2.5 times the amount of trade that we did here in New Mexico. A stunning thing, and it was always counterintuitive to me how we in New Mexico were missing out on trade with our southern neighbors. We have cultural affinity, and as I say, we have a common border, common culture, and really a common future, but we weren't taking advantage of that. So from day one, even before I took office, we immediately worked on a border and trade jobs initiative, and it has exceeded my wildest expectations. Both Governor Martinez and I have been incredibly thrilled with the progress. And just as a parenthetical, before I turn it over to Dr. Pineda, as I set the stage, the latest update is trade with Mexico has not gone up 60%. It has, in fact, doubled in 1 year, just about 93% increase in trade with Mexico year over year, according to the latest statistics from the U.S. Department of Commerce. And we're very, very proud of that, and we're going to continue to focus on that.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Dr. Pineda.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to express my gratitude to the chair of this second day Southwest Summits Conference. And also I would like to congratulate to the Libre Institute and the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber of Commerce to call, in partnership with Hispanic chambers, trade groups, organizations from the USA, the Southwest and New Mexico, to this very important event. Also, I am delighted to participate in this panel about trade and doing business with Mexico with very well-known and prestigious people. I am just the exception, such as Mr. John Varela, Cabinet Secretary for the New Mexico Economic Development Department, and Robert Sachs, President and CEO of Team Technologies. and also with Leah Marquez Peterson, moderator of this panel and president of the Tucson Spanish Chamber of Commerce. In these two first minutes of my participation, I would like to say that I was invited, and I am here on behalf of the International Trade Committee of the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber of Commerce. Recently, thanks to Mr. Alex Romero, president of the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber of Commerce, I was appointed in agreement with Mr. Ernie Vaca, vice president, as a chairman of this committee. I was invited to talk about 3 topics this morning. First, I will talk about the International Trade Committee of the Albuquerque Hispano Chamber of Commerce. Second, I will talk about cultural perspectives, about how to do business in Mexico. And third, I'm going to talk about the perception of American products in Mexico. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. And we'll start with a couple questions. So, Mr. Sachs, I know you've expanded your business 10 years ago, I think you said, into Mexico. Can you tell us how do the operations differ from what you're doing in the United States, and why did you choose Mexico?
Well, it was actually the quest to do business in Mexico began 10 years ago, but we've actually only been in business for this year, first quarter. We've only completed our first quarter. But it was a long journey. Like I said, that we wanted to do business back then, but then when the economy collapsed, we had to focus on our core business, and so we kind of left the initiatives to go into Mexico kind of on the back burner till a couple of years ago. We had some colleagues that we had built some strong relationships with that approached us and said, hey, the aerospace industry has moved down to Mexico. They're in Chihuahua, they're in Querétaro, they're in other parts of Mexico, and these are companies, GE, Honeywell, Bombardier, Bell Helicopter, all the big aerospace companies have moved down to Mexico, and now they're looking for suppliers that can supply aerospace quality components and parts to the industry, and a lot of the Mexican supply base did not have the experience level that we have here in the U.S. doing that kind of work. So they approached us with a joint venture opportunity and asked us to create a joint venture company with them and to be able to use our credentials to get a lot of the business. And that's exactly what we did. We created a new company called Team Aero. And its whole focus right now is the aerospace industry, AS9100 quality parts and things like that. So I had a machine shop here in the South Valley, a second machine shop that I had to support Sandia National Labs and the pulse power work that we did at Sandia. And back in 2010, that contract went internal into the lab. We had to find work for this machine shop. It had kind of been floundering, and I was faced with a choice, sell it at auction for pennies on the dollar or move it down to Mexico and do something with it. So we moved that entire machine shop, lock, stock, and barrel, down to Chihuahua. And happy to report that in our first quarter, we had a $494.77 profit, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're thinking about that, by that point, we figured we would probably had to have sunk in $200,000 or $300,000. So to be in the black this early, we're very happy about that. And the other thing is our employees here were a little bit threatened by the fact that we were taking this to Mexico, and so no jobs were lost here. We kept all our employees here. We moved the machinists from the South Valley to our main operation in the Sandia Science and Technology Park. And now our hope is that we're going to be able to bring some of those parts in a seamless way back up here and do those, and then create that northbound, southbound corridor for us to be able to do that.
Wonderful. We'll get back to more details on that.
Thanks.
Mr. Varela, congratulations, doubling exports in 1 year in New Mexico, incredible. How has the state reached out to businesses of all sizes to encourage exporting?
I believe that, in my opinion, the lowest hanging fruit we had was export growth. We were not a player in export growth when we took office. As was mentioned in the introduction, we've zoomed to number one in the country in overall export growth and number one in the country in job-created export growth, both categories. And the efforts have been targeted all over the world, yeah, but we've had a specific, certain geographies over the world. I shouldn't say the entire world has been our focus, but we've had certain geographies. But trade with Mexico was the most immediate place that we felt that we could increase our trade. And we've undergone really a new vision of a relationship with Mexico, all with the goal in mind, helping business, of course. And so we've done a few things from the policy level. First and foremost, we've created the first of its kind binational community that we're aware of that straddles about 70,000 acres on both sides of the border in Santa Teresa and San Jeronimo near Ciudad Juarez. We have monthly meetings with our counterparts from Mexico, both at the federal and state level. Santa Teresa, as you all know, had been a fantastic, wonderful story for us. Point number two, we've organized a targeted Gold Key, what's called Gold Key Service trade missions to Mexico, where if you're a small business in particular, we have targeted meetings established with pre-selected folks in Mexico that you can sell your goods and services to. The U.S. Department of Commerce has been a great ally and partner in those efforts. This is a federal grant that's competitive that we have now been awarded 3 straight years, and we can continue to succeed with that grant. We're going to be applying for a 4th year. We hope to get that for a 4th year. And finally, it is about relationships. Governor Martinez, Governor Duarte from Chihuahua, as well as Governor Padres from the state of Sonora, meet constantly. And I meet at least once a month, on average, with my counterpart in Mexico, identifying new trade and relationship opportunities for businesses. And I am always honored to go to Chihuahua, Ciudad Juarez, and visit. And it's not only a matter of mutual respect, it's a matter of communicating very often about what businesses are potential matches. I have a very different, maybe we have a very different approach in New Mexico about how we view business in Mexico. And my mantra, and you've heard me, many people have heard me speak about this before, a job created in Chihuahua or Ciudad Juarez ought to be a job created here in our state. And that is indeed coming to fruition. And how do businesses benefit? Well, out of all the businesses that do exporting, especially doing exporting in Mexico, 80% of those businesses, well over 80%, are small businesses. Not these big companies, they're small businesses that have grown and flourished. And those statistics are according to the U.S. Department of Commerce. So that's really our focal point. Establish policy, establish relationships, and then creating that opportunity for small businesses in particular to take advantage of that relationship.
Well, thank you, and I applaud the relationship building. From an Arizona perspective, we have an organization called the Arizona-Mexico Commission that's existed for quite a while that we've worked to have those committee meetings also and continue to build relationships. So I think you're absolutely on the right track. It's great. Dr. Pineda, a question for you. You were born in Mexico, and you've traveled the world and written, I believe, over 22 books. More importantly, also, you were a small business owner. Can you talk about some of the differences in the business culture between doing business in the United States and Mexico?
Sure. Yeah, I born in Mexico City. I am here in Albuquerque since 2003, and I am really proud of being part of this great state, this big city, very important city, and great people. When I was the first time here, I was talking with several professors from the University of New Mexico, and I found friendship. I found a lot of company from them. And in Mexico, the things are very different to New Mexico. Let me talk about some differences between Mexico City and Albuquerque. It's hard to compare because in Mexico City we are more than 23 million of people. We are here less, in Albuquerque less than 1 million of people. And the relationships, the Mexico City, as you know, is a very busy city like Tokyo, like Hong Kong, like Shanghai, like New York, for example. And we can say that talking about doing business, I think that there is an international protocol to do business. The people in high institutions, in high companies, they have an international protocol to do business. You can do this kind of business in Washington, D.C., in Los Angeles, in Tokyo, in Mexico City. But when we talk about small cities, I think that the protocol changed. For this reason, we can say, for example, that in Mexico, when we are working in a high position, you always have assistants, you always have drivers, you always have people that make your calls for you, and you have people to do everything for you. I remember the first time that I was here, my first interview with a vice president at the University of New Mexico. I arrived like 4:30 to have a 1 hour meeting. After 5 p.m., I asked to the vice president, their family. People finish the job at 5 p.m. I said, I don't believe it. In Mexico, if you are the boss, no one go out of the office if the boss is there, because maybe the boss needs some people to do some things. This is a very big difference. In Mexico, the people, there are very important hierarchy in to do business. And talking about the main differences, also, I can say that when we start a meeting doing business in Mexico, almost the people arrive late, 10, 15 minutes late. And when we start a business meeting here, the people almost is at time to do business. But it's not a kind of impolite thing. It's just the way to do business in Mexico. I think that this is my first approach to answer this question. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Doctor. Mr. Sachs, I know you were on a 10-year journey to build your business in Mexico. I think there are a lot of misperceptions around doing business in Mexico, but can you talk about your experience working with the government and establishing a machine shop in Mexico?
Well, I think the important thing in doing business in any foreign country is to really establish the relationships there, because they're the ones that really know the ropes and the way around. Some of the things that were different and a little bit frustrating were the time that it takes to do what are very simple things to do here. You know, here we create LLC companies, you know, like that. You know, we have it within 10 days and everybody signs, and boy, it just took months and months and months, and we were like, you know, you got to come down here and sign it. And I'm like, well, just FedEx it to me. I'll sign it here with a notary. No, we got to look you in the eye, you know. I'm like, okay, so those are the kinds of things that you got to be very, very patient. It's a whole different kind of thing. There's a lot more rubber stamps, I guess, with everything, and things just take longer. And if you have the patience to get through that, then I think it'll be very rewarding. But again, you've got to have, in my opinion, the people that know how to do business in Mexico, know all the labor laws, all the tax laws, all that kind of stuff. I would never attempt to just go down there on my own and open a business and try and start doing business. You've got to establish those relationships. Sometimes they take a long time to nurture those relationships. But I think in the long run, it's worth it if you have the patience again to go through it.
And kind of a follow-up question. Our chamber represents businesses along in southern Arizona, and we've had some real challenges with border banking. Banks, as they've tightened regulatory guidelines, have closed checking accounts or ended lines of credit and so on. So we're working with a lot of our financial institutions to find different opportunities. Have you experienced any of that with your banking relationships as you started doing business in Mexico?
You know, we have not really established the banking piece yet. We're still just trying to get to a point where we're again in the black, and we're a little bit in the black, and so I've talked to some people on how they do that, and I think it's they've got some pretty simplified ways to do it, but they do check very closely on any kind of banking that you're going to set up. They, you know, they want to look at your bylaws and make sure that everything's in line. It is a little bit harder to get that established down there. It takes longer, than here. But I guess those are just the regulations you have to go through.
Wonderful, thank you. Mr. Varela, you've been instrumental in changing New Mexico's tax code and recruiting large corporate investors. What role has your and Governor Martinez's focus on trade played in recruiting those large companies? And what has been your competitive advantages over states surrounding you, like Arizona?
You have an hour to answer that question?
And I'm going to take notes. Go ahead.
Well, let's start from the more global perspective of the relationship. Be very candid. When we speak to our counterparts in Mexico, there is a perception that other states around us are not as friendly. Quite frankly, Arizona, with some of its policies that it's pursued, are not perceived as being friendly toward Mexico. Same can be said about Texas, even though they have a huge effort to recruit and expand their businesses, no doubt about it. But still, that bilateral relationship between Texas and Mexico is still tense for a variety of reasons. Out of all the border states, it's interesting. We have border governors conferences every year. We too have a New Mexico Chihuahua Commission and a New Mexico Sonora Commission. Of course, we participate quite frequently and beyond the annual meetings that we have, much beyond that. As I mentioned before, the communications are constant and ongoing. But it was pretty stark. The last 2 years we've had border governors conferences. Governor Martinez has been the only governor from the U.S. to attend. Other states have sent representatives, and that's fine. But she has been the only governor. 2 years ago when we had it in Mexico, she was the only U.S. governor to be there. That's pretty stark, and it sends a message that we are willing to engage in this bilateral dialogue and to have business with our neighbors to the south. Frankly, Governor Brown in California didn't send anybody. And that sent a message also to the people of Mexico. That being said, we have a huge strategic advantage as well, not only in the relationship and the cultural identity, but we in New Mexico, and I know this is bold to say, but it's something that I think is coming to fruition now if you've been to Santa Teresa. The governor and I have said that New Mexico will be the gateway of choice for trade for the Americas, period. We have a geographic advantage that's unparalleled out of any state along our 2,000-mile border. We are the easternmost land bridge. If you can imagine between all the NAFTA countries, where Santa Teresa, and indeed our entire border really is, we are halfway east and west. We are halfway north and south. And if you look at where the convergence of transportation routes, it's right by Ciudad Juarez and Santa Teresa. That geographic advantage cannot, nor should it be trivialized. It's incredibly important. The cost of building, and this is why we have this binational community that's springing up. The cost of building infrastructure over land is a fraction of the cost of building infrastructure over the Rio Grande on a bridge. We are scaling our community to accommodate growth so that there aren't choke points like you have along the 2,000-mile border. We're dealing with a clean slate. That advantage is incomparable. The third advantage that we have when we talk about comparative advantages is the workforce match. The ability to match, for example, distribution and logistics operations on our side of the border, Union Pacific being a perfect example of that located, versus the needs of what is a growing manufacturing base and a growing economy in Mexico. So we complement one another. There's a symbiotic relationship there that's very apparent, that we have a unique ability to serve because of what we just talked about, and that's what we are doing. I go on and on about our comparative advantages, but the bottom line is this. We have seen great growth. We have seen 1 million square feet almost of unoccupied warehouse, office, and commercial space in Santa Teresa when we took office. Now it's totally full with 500,000 square feet of new construction now being planned. And oh, by the way, we have 2,000 new homes that are being built and under construction in that area. And 2,000 may not seem like a whole lot, but that's 2,000 more than we had beforehand. And on our San Jeronimo side, our neighbor side, nearly 7,000 homes are being planned as we speak, where no homes or residential areas have been even contemplated 4.5 years ago. So it's a very exciting development along the border, and these are our advantages because the population base, again, to conclude on that, is now moving to that area to support that workforce.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And on kind of behalf of Arizona, I'll mention that you're right. I think we had a public relations challenge, certainly after SB 1070 was signed, and that was 5 years ago, if you aren't aware. As a Chamber of Commerce, we headed to Sonora right away to talk to our counterparts, the Mexican chambers, about how Arizona is open and friendly to business. We have seen Mexican tourism dollars increase and continue to increase. So I think we're beyond that, and we have a new governor in place, Governor Doug Ducey, who is committed to try and double exports to Mexico. So we're very excited, and he's put a lot of effort and focus on trade with Mexico. But thank you. Let's see here. Dr. Pineda, question for you. There has been talk that Pemex, the large national Mexican oil and energy company, is going to allow some private partnerships, number of federal reforms obviously going on in Mexico. Can you describe the significance of this, and does it signal a move towards a more free market system in Mexico?
Thank you for the question. Please let me add some comments about the thing that Robert Sachs said about opening a company in Mexico. If you would like to open a company in Mexico, first you have to go with the notary. The notary is going to say, okay, I'm going to do all your agreements, your corporation agreements, and you have to pay me at least $1,000 for doing that. You can't do any business if you don't have any notary document. You have to pay more than $1,000 to do that. That's in Mexico City. As you are here, you pay almost nothing. You pay for sending your documents to the department, the Secretary of Department. You have to pay $200 if you would like to expedite the process in 2 days. The notary takes more than 1 month to give you the documents with the seal that you are doing now business. After that, you have to go to the tax office in order to have your number to do business. You're going to spend about 2 or 3 weeks to do that. You are here, you can process your number to do business online. In less than 10 minutes, you have your number. If you would like to open a checking account, here it's really easy. You need just 2 or 3 documents, and the same day you can open the checking account. In Mexico, if you would like to do that, you have to take a lot of documents, and then they are going to say, okay, I'm going to investigate where are you coming, why you are doing business, why you would like to open a checking account here. And it's a lot of time to open a company in Mexico, but that's not the problem. If you would like to close a company, also you have to go to the notary to have a sale. You have to pay again $1,000 almost to have this document. You send the document to other office, and after 6 months you say, okay, you are officially closed. That's the problem in Mexico. To do business is very bureaucratic. It takes a lot of time. For this reason, but it's good to do business. I don't want to say that it's not good. It's very good to do business. But we need to know that there are several processes that we need to do. My advice is that if you want to open some kind of company there, you have to talk with people that knows the system. You have to have advices from this kind of people, because if not, it's really hard. It's really hard to open a company. In regards to the Pemex, the Mexican President Peña Nieto, he did, after years of discussion in Mexico, he did change, constitutional change, to have investments from other countries in Mexico. We have here, for example, if I would like to buy gasoline, I can go to several companies and I can find several prices in different companies. I have the right to do that. I have the opportunity to buy where I would like to buy because it's better gasoline or because the price is better. In Mexico, you don't have this possibility. You have all the gas stations are named Pemex, Petróleos Mexicanos. It's the same gasoline in every state, and the prices are higher sometimes than here. And that's the problem in Mexico, that we have a monopoly with this kind of energy. But after reviewing the Constitution, the President Peña Nieto went to UK, went to London, and he expressed for first time that Mexico is going to be open for international investment. And now, after 2 years, more or less, we are now have all the process to have partnership with international companies, almost after 2 years. That's just an example that the things are really hard to do in Mexico. Now we have the constitutional change, but we don't have the regulations, the rules to do business. With the people from England, for example, they are waiting to do business, but they are not able to do this kind of business now. But what's going on now? Mexican government is sending a lot of people working in this industry to have training, for example, in London. For example, in Aberdeen, that is at the north of London. We are having a lot of cooperation agreements to train Mexican people to do business in this field of the petroleum. But I believe that we need to improve in Mexico this kind of practices, because it's not good to say we are open and we are not really open to this kind of markets. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. And before I move on to the next questions, if you have questions, if you could write them down on the pads of paper at your seat. And Edgar and Hartmeet, where are they? They could raise their arm. They're going to be running around to pick up. Certainly in doing business in Mexico, but how difficult was it to find labor that you trusted, and what advice would you give to someone who's also considering hiring people in Mexico?
Well, that, I really can't talk to that because that's really the responsibility of my partners. That was our deal, is that I'll provide the equipment and all the machines, and they'll provide hiring the people. They know all the labor laws and everything. So to be honest with you, I don't have to mess with that. So, and that was really what convinced me to go ahead and do this joint venture, was that I knew I didn't know about all that stuff, and I knew that I had to have partners that I could trust, that are already running successful businesses, that have been successful doing it. Right now we've hired a couple of people, and very highly qualified, by the way. We have people with bachelors of science degrees in mechanical engineering running our CNC machines, and that's really unheard of here in the U.S. You have machinists that kind of come up through a process, and they might have an associate's degree, but so very highly educated workforce down there. We're finding very interested in doing a good job. I mean, they're taking the things that we've kind of taught other places to do, things like a Kaizen or a Lean Six Sigma and the 5 S's and that kind of thing. I mean, we find that they take that to kind of a religious level. I mean, our floor down there, you could eat off the floor. Everything has a place. There's tape around where the trash can goes. I mean, everything has a place, and they follow that very closely to a religious level. So we're very happy about the labor force that we're finding down there. I haven't had to mess with it much. Our partners take care of all that.
And kind of a follow-up question to that, we have a few members in our Tucson Hispanic Chamber that are offshoring companies. So the offshore group, Colectron International, is one of them. Did you explore offshoring, or is what you've created is something different, a joint venture partnership?
Yeah, ours is a joint venture partnership. We've got 50% of the company here, the U.S., and then we've got 3 partners in Mexico that have the other portion of the company. Actually, between myself and a partner here in Albuquerque that I trust, we've got 55% of the company, so we've got the majority ownership of the company.
Okay, thank you. A question from our audience for Mr. Varela. How would the Trans-Pacific Partnership benefit New Mexico?
Well, it's a timely question. In Washington, Congress is debating really 2 corollary initiatives. One is the TPA, otherwise known as Trade Promotion Authority, which the Obama administration is pushing quite vigorously. And that's in conjunction to open up a really wide-reaching Pacific Rim agreement that involves 12 countries, including the United States, otherwise known as TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Both really are necessary to pass. Most recently in Washington this week, and in ongoing discussions both in the House and Senate, strange political dynamics are occurring. And I'm going to be the first to say I don't agree with the Obama administration on everything or on very much, but this is one issue, maybe the one issue, frankly, speaking candidly, that I agree with the administration on. And that the general notion that usually liberalizing trade benefits our economy. So with respect to TPA, I think it's a good idea. I think it's something that's happened since 1974 when these agreements have been discussed. And it is necessary to allow the administration, whether it be Republican or Democrat, have some lead in negotiating trade agreements without a trade agreement dying a death of 1,000 paper cuts, let's say, as the old saying goes. You have to have one agreement to present to Congress. Also under TPA, it's important to mention that Congress establishes some general parameters in which to give the administration to negotiate on. And under usual agreements under the TPA, there are certain requirements of disclosure. And that is ongoing, as I understand. So according to Representative Ryan just a day or two ago, he said that it will pass the House. Senate has already reached agreement. So I expect TPA to be passed. And I think TPA, which will then lay the groundwork for this broader trade agreement with countries like New Zealand and Australia and other Pacific Rim countries, even Vietnam, will ultimately help us and open up some of the fastest growing markets in the world. These 12 countries represent, other than the United States, represent 40% of the world's GDP. And to not take advantage of 40% of the world's GDP into trade, I think hinders not only our country, but it also hinders our export momentum that we've developed here in New Mexico. Our New Mexico companies, especially the small businesses like Bob's, can compete and can take advantage of those trade agreements. So I support TPA, certainly support the concept of the Trans-Pacific Partnership as it exists now, and I think it poses some great economic and job creation opportunities for our country and certainly for our state.
Thank you very much. And we want to remind you, if you have a question, you can raise your arm up and Hartnett will come around and grab your question for you. Dr. Pineda, speaking of agreements, I think NAFTA is celebrating its 20th anniversary, I believe, this year. I hear different perspectives of it when I'm in Mexico or in Arizona. Can you talk about kind of the benefits to NAFTA or the cost to that, and if you think it's been successful for U.S. and Mexican businesses?
Okay. Yeah, I think that NAFTA is it's a good agreement between Canada, Mexico, and United States. Thanks to this agreement, Mexico depends of the Mexico, all the importation that we did in Mexico, 73% are from USA. That means that we depend a lot of the USA economy. If USA economy is having problems, Mexico has a lot of problems. But for Mexico has been a great instrument because we have more people working in several companies. And also I think that this kind of instrument has helped to do better relationships between Mexico, Canada, and USA. Now, we are really proud that we are recovering our development in Mexico. We say that we have unemployment range of 7%. When we start working with NAFTA, we have about 12 or 13%, and now we are less than 7%, and this thanks to NAFTA agreement. I think that another very important aspect is there are less regulation for people that are in USA. If you have partners in Mexico, you can have more benefits if you invest money in your company in Mexico. In few words, I think that it's been a great agreement from Mexico. I think that the best country, the most benefits are being for Mexico rather than USA and Canada.
Thank you very much. Someone in the audience is noting, Secretary Varela, actually, that you were on a recent local radio interview where you outlined the classes of exported products which help make up the 93% increase in exports. Could you please reiterate those products?
Thanks for the question. And is it your question, Ron? No wonder it was so brilliant. I appreciate it. I'm happy to reiterate the answer to this question because every sector that's tracked by the U.S. Department of Commerce has shown an increase in trade with Mexico. But the sectors that have seen the most dramatic increase are the following. Transportation, metal goods, both raw metal goods and fabricated metal goods. We've seen a dramatic increase in agricultural products, both raw agricultural products and value-added food products as well. We've also seen a very large increase in certain services, transportation leading the way in that regard, no surprise. But again, the one sector that we're very happy to see increase, it's the sector that people in my job are always pursuing, is manufacturing. And our state is turned the corner on manufacturing growth. We still have a long way to go. Let me be very, very clear. But manufacturing is rise, and it's due largely in part to our increase in trade with Mexico along those lines. At some point, I'd love to have somebody ask a question. Maybe we'll talk about it, about why jobs are being reshored to the border. I won't address that now, but that is, in fact, the dynamic that we need to position our state for. It's an eventuality. It's been occurring for the last close to a decade. It started slowly, but now there's a big flood of reshoring of Asian jobs, and we need to, again, position our state from a policy perspective and from an infrastructure perspective to be able to take advantage of that. So that we can continue, Ron, that continuing increase in sharp trajectory in trade with Mexico.
And feel free, Secretary, to certainly address that. I know in Arizona we've been doing a lot of outreach to different countries and looking at that kind of nearshoring concept of companies based in Arizona doing manufacturing in Mexico. What role has New Mexico taken, or where do you see the horizon around that?
Well, we have a very, very bright future. Again, I'm going to reiterate this point, we are planning this 70,000-acre binational community so that commerce will flow seamlessly. We are aligning roads. We are aligning infrastructure corridors. We are aligning utility corridors in a very seamless way, even industrial parks, residential areas, and integrating that into one large community. obviously both with sovereign rights and laws and all of that. Let me be very clear also. But the reason that's important is that it will continue our momentum and the growth that we've experienced down there. The reshoring of jobs will be occurring for the foreseeable future, as I expect. In my opinion, the Asian manufacturing experiment has failed to a large degree. And manufacturers are having a rather dim view in many cases of China. And I'm going to talk about the Chinese market. It's an unpredictable place to do business. Labor costs are increasing dramatically. Utility costs are through the roof. Transportation costs, despite the decline in oil prices, are also increasing. But the most important thing is that for the higher end manufactured good, the quality of the products that are being manufactured in China are inferior to those that are being manufactured in the United States or in Mexico. And that is why Mexico and Chihuahua, in particular, the last year in the state of Chihuahua, I was told by my counterpart, in 2014, 20,000 or so manufacturing jobs were created in Chihuahua, many of which were in sectors that complement what we do. That's why you're seeing this momentum and this growth, because we're taking advantage of that. As Bob said, the aviation and aerospace sector is growing dramatically in Chihuahua. Chihuahua City, now expanding to Ciudad Juarez. And we have those raw metal suppliers and the finished metal suppliers to supply those businesses. It's that symbiotic relationship that we are taking advantage of. And I continue to see an incredibly bright horizon on our trade. I am very bullish on that and very bullish on the job creation which will occur.
Thank you. Mr. Sachs, running a high-tech engineering and manufacturing company, what impact, opportunity has relations with China? As you determined whether you would manufacture your product in Mexico, did you also look at Asia, or what kind of impact do they have on your industry?
Well, I think Secretary Varela said the momentum is moving back from Asia to this hemisphere. And, and if anybody doubts it, just take a trip down to Chihuahua City or Querétaro or any of these cities. And one of the big things that strikes me is that whenever you go to a place and you see cranes all over the place, you know that there's a lot of growth. Last time I was in Chihuahua a couple of months ago, I looked out my hotel window and I saw 6 cranes from my window right there building high-rises. And it's incredible. You go into these parks, something similar to like the Sandia Science and Technology Park. I don't know if any of you have ever been up there, but get up there. And so they'll have these industrial parks that have, you know, a dozen companies that each have 5,000 employees. And there's manufacturers and companies from all over the world there. And in your hotel in the morning when you're having breakfast, you hear Japanese being spoken, you're hearing Korean, you're hearing German, there's companies there from the Netherlands, all over the world, they're right there. And so what really kind of struck me is that, you know, here in New Mexico we've been a little bit maybe spoiled, if you will, where we've had a lot of great government work with the national labs, and that's really been our focus, and it's been great for us. But what really dawned on me is that we're sitting on a huge international market just south of us, and if you can really combine what's going on down creating a region of the world where people really, they don't need to go anywhere else. They can get the technology developed right here. They can get it manufactured right here. And when I say right here, you know, hopefully we do have a long way to go in manufacturing in the state, but I think we're getting there. And I think as things happen with the dollar and that kind of thing, I think we're going to be able to be successful bringing some of that manufacturing back to New Mexico. Maybe it's going to be in the form of automation, but it really truly is amazing the international market that is sitting to the south of us, so that we just kind of have not really looked at. Again, if you have any doubts, take one of the trade missions that the chamber does down there. or that the city of Albuquerque, they always have trade missions. Get on one of those, of the state, I'm sorry, yes, of course. And go down there and see for yourself what's happening, and then it kind of makes you unafraid. I mean, I guess one of the things a lot of people are probably afraid of venturing off down there, and it's never scared me because I grew up going to Juarez all the time as a kid. My grandfather loved going down there, so it never scared me. But it's just something that you have to kind of see with your own eyes to really understand what's really going on, and it's right here. It's right here as our neighbor.
Thank you. There's a question for me, actually, to be more specific about the banking challenges that people are experiencing in doing business with Mexico. And I'll tell you my own experience. It's about 2 to 3 years ago, we started seeing situations where bank branches were closed in the Nogales, Douglas area, which is our southernmost border close to Mexico. We started hearing stories of U.S. companies that do businesses in pesos and dollars having their accounts closed or having their lines of credit ended or not extended. We also heard stories, as we have members in Sonora and Hermosillo and other cities, of Mexican businesses that were doing business on this side of the border who had also had their banking relationships ended. Our Arizona Senators, John McCain and Jeff Flake, have been on top of this and started writing letters, I think it began almost 2 years ago, to the Senate Finance Committees and getting involved, writing letters to the CEOs of the largest banks in our nation, asking for explanations. Within, I think it was about 6 months ago, we hosted an event with Congressman Gosar, who's a congressman in Arizona, down at the border to really address this issue and brought together Nogales businesses. Nogales, if you're not aware, is one of the top 6 ports in our nation, so a lot of activity going on. And he heard overwhelmingly that the situation had not been fixed. We needed to continue to address this. He pointed to a letter that we were not aware of that the chairman of the FDIC, the banking regulatory arm, had written to the CEOs of the biggest banks to say, you need to reassess how you are looking at these accounts. Our understanding was that the banks were looking kind of as industry or classes and shutting down those that seemed high risk, because certainly they're worried about money laundering and some of the bad stuff that was happening along the border. The FDIC chairman's letter, though, focused on taking businesses on a case-by-case basis, which was very good news to us. We wrote letters to the FDIC, and they sent a district director from San Francisco out to Nogales to meet with our businesses. And I will tell you, the conversation continues. There's been no set solution yet. I was curious if you'd been hearing the same issues in New Mexico or Texas along the border, but it is still a top concern for businesses in southern Arizona. And there are certain banks that are working with our members that do business in pesos and dollars, and others that are not. So that's kind of the update there. Question for Dr. Pineda. I see that a lot of your background is in political science and public policy, and I had a question related to the elections. We've got upcoming elections in Mexico happening in June. Our mayors will change, our governors will change. What impact do you think that will have on businesses in the United States doing business in Mexico, or some of the different messaging you're hearing from some of the campaigns?
Yeah, we want to have election this June 7. That's incredible. In Mexico, we have a lot of regulation. First, to vote, you have to have a ID, very special ID with several things that very important document that you need for everything. But if you don't have that document, you can vote. You can vote, but the problem is, for example, I would like to check my website about in Mexico with United States. I go to the official website, the Secretary of Economy in Mexico. If you try to open this website, you are not able to find anything because we are in elections, and the government said with the institute that manage all the elections that you are not supposed to promote anything about government because we are in elections. In other words, if we would like to do some kind of business now, it's going to be hard because if the government signs an agreement with any country, the government is not supposed to announce that we are doing business with China or USA because we are in election time. That's impact a lot the economy, the election. Instead, promoting the election seems like we are just focusing on election, no more exists in Mexico. But we are going to change 500 representatives. We have 500, and we are going to change all of them. We are going to have new governors in several states, and also we are going to change the senators. Not all of them, but almost 40%. And I think that the political party that is more willing to do business with all the countries is the party that is now in the power. I think that they are very open to do business with several countries. But we have some bad experience in the few, maybe 6 months. Mexico opened competition to build the first high-speed train between Querétaro and Mexico City. A Chinese company won this contract, but after 2 weeks, Mexicans say, okay, we're going to do again this competition because something kind of corruption was there. I went to China last April, and the first question that they asked me is, what about the high-speed train? What about the USA government with Mexico? They are pushing to Mexico to say we are going to do a new competition. I mean, Mexico needs to do message of clarity, transparency, accountability. We need to do that. I think that our new governments, new representatives needs to work a lot in transparency, because it's bad to say it, but we don't have a good reputation in this part of the business, in international business. But I think that the new generation of Mexico, they are with different background, they have more experience in doing business in several countries, and I believe that the new election in June are going to show that Mexico can be more open to do international business. And also I would like to talk about one of the most important opportunities to do business in Mexico is the workforce. If you would like to pay the minimum wage, it's about $150 per month. That's the people that make good money. It's about $1,500 per month. And I think that in New Mexico, the poverty line is less than $8,000, right? In Mexico, the people don't make this amount. We have 40% of our economy is informal economy. And we have other numbers that show that we need to improve more in that. But for international investors to have to pay this amount for having very good workers is good. You can have more money for doing business with Mexico if you have people there. That's the thing that I would like to say.
Thank you, Doctor. Question for Secretary Varela. A huge part of growing trade with Mexico is concentrated on the border at Santa Teresa. How are businesses in central New Mexico taking advantage, and what can we do to encourage them to look at trade?
Well, we have somebody right to my right who's taken advantage of that. He's a good example of what a business can and should be doing in doing business with our southern neighbors. We recently highlighted businesses around the state, not just in Santa Teresa or the border in Doña Ana County or in Luna Hidalgo County, our bordering counties, of how to do business with Mexico. And there were a number of small businesses who have taken advantage of that trade in a variety of sectors, as we've discussed. The state, the entire state, as I've mentioned before, needs to be that portal for international trade. We're seeing this ripple effect now that is occurring. According to the most recent statistics, in New Mexico, in the last 4.5 years, just in 4.5 years, 16,000 new trade-related jobs were created. Our international trade went up by over 250%. in those 4.5 years, not all of those jobs are in Doña Ana County or Hidalgo or Luna County. They are spread throughout the state. 16,000 new jobs as a result of the international trade. 6,000 of those jobs can be directly traced to our trade with Mexico. And I encourage those of you who have small businesses here to work with our department. We have an Office of International Trade that we aggressively pursue. Go on our website, gonm.biz. Speak to your local folks who help small businesses. I see John here. I see Anna Muller here. I see you've got your Hispano Chamber who really help small businesses with the nuts and bolts of starting, expanding, getting financing. We're here to help too, our department, and we've helped a number of these small, but many, too many to count, small businesses enter the Mexican market. So I want to emphasize that services are available, not only at the federal level, but also at our level, and we certainly encourage that. And again, to reach out to the folks I just mentioned to try to figure out this market. It's an exciting opportunity, and things are improving. So.
I know there are chambers here representing several different states, I think 7 or 8 in all, if I recall. And there are tools that are available at the federal level and at our state level to help our member businesses grow and expand their business into Mexico. In particular, though, that I know we've been studying in Arizona are EB-5 visas, or the entrepreneurial visas. It seems like there's a real opportunity to not only have Mexican investors investing in our states, as well as doing trade and exporting product. And I don't know if this is a question for you, Secretary, in terms of what role or what kind of outreach you're doing around EB-5 visas.
For those of you who aren't aware, EB-5 is a federal law which allows foreign investors, FDI, foreign direct investment, from individuals who are looking to become naturalized American citizens. It's been criticized by some as a shortcut to American citizenship, but it is a lawful process which has been, on the whole, very successful in attracting foreign direct investors into the United States. The EB-5 program is one which I believe, again, on the whole, is a good one. Again, 4.5 years ago, there were no EB-5 zones in our state. None. Today, there are at least a half a dozen that we are aware of that have been certified, and others that are growing. The EB-5 program is one which, to summarize very quickly, allows an individual, typically with about $500,000 worth of investment into a private enterprise that's job-related or in public infrastructure, and then allows them to apply for temporary U.S. residency, and assuming those jobs are created within that 5-year period, can then apply for permanent residency status and or citizenship. That's sort of how it works in a nutshell. The EB-5 program welcomes investments from all over the world, and it's one that has starting to show and yield some benefits here in the state. And again, we're new to the game here in the state, but we're catching up very quickly. Lee, I don't know what the Arizona experience has been, but I assume it's been favorable. And we continue to monitor this very, very closely. There will be amendments, as I understand, to the EB-5 program once again as it continues to, it will be reauthorized as far as we can tell. But I know that reauthorization is coming up in Washington, so it's something to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and I'll say it's been a great tool in Arizona. Even in just southern Arizona, we had 2 regional hospitals that were desperately needed, and they've been built with EB-5 dollars, and they've been Chinese and Mexican investors. So I think the communities are very appreciative of that. We had a question from the audience asking kind of for a maybe more comprehensive definition of reshoring, Secretary, and what sectors you think will be most affected by reshoring.
Let me elaborate very briefly on the reshoring phenomenon that's taking place. This trend had started about maybe a decade ago. There was a rush to China. There was this huge rush to enter the Chinese market, and that's going to continue. Let's be candid and frank about that. It's a huge market. Clearly, it's too big to be ignored by investors. The Chinese government, however, Dr. Pineda, is Mexico is a breeze to do business in China, in Mexico than it is China. The horror stories that I hear anecdotally about doing business Chinese market, frankly, I think very long and very hard about investing in China right now, other than, again, to enter their market. But to go manufacture a product and then package that and ship it to other markets around the world, I would think I just wouldn't do it, frankly, until things really improve. It's an unpredictable place to do business. We all know about the environmental nightmare that exists there, on and on and on. To more directly answer the question, those things that are going to be reshored, we're seeing them now. The things that won't be reshored, things like textiles, lower-end manufactured goods, probably are not coming back to the Americas. They might. I'm not saying they won't. But the most likely candidates for reshoring, and we've already seen it, and the most likely candidates to continue to see growth are the following. High-tech products. Exhibit A for that is Foxconn, right across the border in Santa Teresa. Foxconn, any Dell computer that you buy in North America is manufactured at that Foxconn facility, which is quite literally a stone's throw away from our border. 6,000 employees at that one facility, with growth capacity to 20,000 employees down the road. Sector number 2, aviation and aerospace and related products, automotive, other types of consumer goods, washing machines, dryers, microwaves. And we're going to see other types of goods that we can't even foresee now that I think will take place in Mexico. It's a very exciting time for this region. And I expect it to continue. But those 3 sectors are where I see particularly strong growth and incredible resiliency and potential for the future.
Thank you. I think we're out of time, but I did want to say what a pleasure it was to moderate this panel representing Arizona with our New Mexico colleagues here. I also did have 2 partners from Arizona join me at this summit, and I wanted to make sure you got to meet Glenn Hammer. He's the president of the Arizona Chamber here in the center, and then Kerwin Brown, who's the president of the Black Chamber of Arizona. So excited to have them both here with us. Also wanted to mention, thank you. And remind you that I did bring a bunch, again, of the Arizona Sonora Business Resource Guide. This includes about 1,600 businesses in both states that would love to give you a copy of it. And please give a round of applause for our panelists today. Thank you very much.